Looking at the YouTube. I did that 14 years ago. Ay, ay, ay. Time just flies. You can unmute yourselves. Welcome to RenéMarie Stroke of Luck. I love when technology goes very simply, although I had a little difficulties prior to the show. And of course, we just like stay calm, navigate through it. That's a good intro to the show because that's what life's about, right? Happy New Year, everybody. This is going to be an extraordinary show. We got dynamic guests to start the show. It's funny though, because I got to tell you, I have great faith, and I know Jimmy knows this, and Chris is learning this about me, that, I've always had great faith. And it's funny. God is very funny. I used the word what it was the word I used. I gotta find it. I think it's transformative. Transformative. And yesterday I was working on a flyer for one of the communities I lifestyle director on a part-time basis. And they wanted me to do the Chinese New Year, and it's the year of the snake. And the word in that write up is transformative. So it's a great way to start the year, and our first show in January with the transformative show. And we're so honored to have Jimmy and Chris, and Ralph will be joining us. He's out west and it's 3 hours, and I know it's a little hard for me to get him up, my co-host. But this is going to be an extraordinary year for so many reasons. First of all, we get to appreciate it, and we get to enjoy life. And life is really difficult for a lot of people right now. We want to make sure that we send our condolences and our heartfelt support to everybody that's going through something in life, because life is challenging. Life is really challenging. It's not so easy to get through life, especially the older you get, the more challenges you deal with. But this show is going to give you tools to help us to really navigate through that, to really love each other through it. I'm writing another book. I was telling Chris about one book that I'm trying to write. I'm grabbing extra innings when, my stroke happened on the softball field. So this is the extra inning of my life. But I'm also working on another book that really is very dear to me. It's called Love Them Through It, right? When people are challenged, or they come at you with negativity, or just sadness, or whatever they're coming at you with, you got to love them through it. You can't be negative towards them, because the two negativities are going to bounce off each other. So we're going to talk to Chris more about that. And Jimmy and I, we use the sports, the philosophy of sports, and what we were coached in to really learn how to get through life. And that's why Jimmy does this coaching on a hiring basis, for people that are, for especially young people, but people our age as well, that are that want to transition to a new job, or that want to need a job out of college, or, Jimmy's going to give them the tools. And it's really about believing in yourself. And Jimmy's philosophy is to come up with a story. And we can't wait to hear about Chris and we were talking in the Zoom green room about, hypnotists, and in my world, and this did not come from Chris, it's that people, when they think of a hypnotist, they're kind of put back on that. So we're gonna talk to Chris about bringing light to that, and how he navigates through that. So I'm so happy to have you both here. It's going to be a great show, a great way to start the 2025. And I got to mention, please, that my Unconditional Love concert, which is a milestone for me. It's happening on April 26th at 6:00, and we're doing it at the Yogi Berra Stadium. Not the Yogi Berra Stadium, or Yogi Berra Museum, which is a dream for me. It's a dream for me. So I'm so happy to share that with everybody, and more information to come. And this tickets go on sale pretty soon, and there's limited tickets. So once the tickets go out, please purchase them, because it's very exciting. So I'm going to stop talking, because I'm rattling, because I'm very excited about the year. And thank you for joining me, Chris and Jimmy and Chris. How are you today?
Doing great. Thanks so much, Renee. You're putting a lot of pressure on Chris and I, saying it's going to be extraordinary. So maybe don't say that again, please.
It will be. It will be. Jimmy, you and I have spoken in the past. Let's let Chris introduce himself, and tell us, how you got into the hypnotist, how you be, what drove
Yeah.
you to choose that world as a young, a rising, professional? I mean, and that's another thing, like people, my world, not Chris's, but I think that most people don't look at it like it is a professional occupation to be a hypnotist, and what you do with that. So I'll let you share all that stuff, information, Chris.
Right. Well, and thanks for having me on your show. And this is just a delight to be part of this conversation because I think there's a lot that we can talk about here, and I'm just kind of very curious what we visit on today. As far as in a nutshell, I was going through some things myself and went ahead and took an undergrad degree in psychology, undergrad degree. And after that degree, I kind of decided to notice that there were tools that people needed. People needed tools that worked faster to get results, to help people to change and learn. So, and I needed them very fast. So I actually hired somebody to train me. And long story short, fast forward 25 years, and I've opened some of the first schools in the country to teach it. And yeah, so there it is. As you say, it is a profession it has its own codes and everything. And yeah,
You know what's funny, Chris, though? Because you mentioned something, and we were talking, once again, we were talking in the Zoom green room, and I think Jimmy knows this about me, like, and Jimmy's the same way. I'll tell you right now, like, we want things done, like, immediately. Like, when Jimmy texts me, I text him back. When he emails me, like, as soon as I see it, I email him back. Like, we are just, it's our makeup. It's how, but the rest of the world really isn't like that. But for those of us that are like that, what is hypnosis? How does that help? How does, I want to speak about this in the proper tone as we were talking before. How does that tool in your tool belt help to navigate through that? How?
well, we have, and your topic of today is visual,
Right.
actually, which is perfect to answer this question because we as human beings have channels in our brain of how to process data in the world. We have actual channels, and these can be known as representational systems or modalities, but they're visual, kinesthetic, auditory.
What's kinesthetic?
Kinesthetic is what we feel.
Okay.
Now, it's the five senses. And we process unconsciously through these five senses. So if we want things fast, it turns out visual is the channel that works the fastest. When we imagine something, fantasize about it, visualize it, believe it or not, that actually makes our bodies and our brains kind of match what we want to do. And it just makes it so much faster.
And that's almost like the secret, right? The drawing in things into your life, because you do have to feel it. You do have to visualize it. And the more you do it, right? The faster you'll draw it in. I want to share something. Many years ago, I was bringing my kids to, no, I was in a really bad place, and I was bringing I was going to Barnes and Nobles with my mother. No, I'm so sorry. Let me reiterate. I was bringing my kids to DePaul High School, and I stopped at the bookstore, and I picked, out of all the books in that place, that was a little bookstore there, I picked a book called "Excuse Me, Your Life Is Waiting" by Lynn Grabhorn, and she describes, like, you have to feel it. You can't just, just things don't just come into your life. You have to feel it. Do you agree, Chris?
I will say this. I agree with we say we want to do visual and then feel it. So we
Okay.
call it VK. So that's
Okay.
good. I would like to say this though, as far as creating the life you want, I believe if you buy a shovel, you don't stick that shovel by the shed and expect a hole to be dug in the morning. You got to do the work.
Oh yeah, absolutely, positively,
Yeah.
absolutely, positively. Jimmy, when people are going for a job, I mean, I know you talk about the stories, but how do you interpret like what Chris is talking about?
Well, it's so interesting, Chris. It's like, it's funny. I talk about success lanes when you talk about the channels. It's literally something that I talk about when someone is interviewing and help them sort of create their stories that way. Where when those really difficult questions come at you, like tell me about yourself, what's your greatest strength and weakness, right? Tell me about something that happened in your life that you had to overcome. Talk about something that you worked in a team where you had a really challenging manager, but you still had to provide and still had to make it happen. So I kind of help them in a way of thinking in my brain, I say it this way, I'm terrible at puzzles. So if you put a puzzle in front of me, I'm awful. Unless it's a little kid's puzzle, I can kind of hammer through that. But a big puzzle, I'm done. But my brain kind of thinks in puzzles. So it's weird. But when a question would come at me, I almost visualize like swim lanes or lanes. Well, what are they really asking me? Oh, that question about tell me about yourself. So in my brain, that trigger is in a lane of how I grew up, the kind of man I am. What kind of, what did my parents instill in me? What about my work ethic, right? And then have 3 or 4 stories lined up around all of those triggers, so to speak, the visual triggers, Chris, like you said beautifully. Then now I see that question coming, and now that takes the anxiety out of it, right? The next question lanes could be my resume, right? So you could get into something where that person is going to be hammering the heck out of you about your resume, right? They're going to look 5 jobs back and say, oh, I see you used Excel there. Tell me about your Excel skills. And it's like, oh my gosh, I haven't looked at Excel in months or years, right? But so now your opportunity for that job just went down because that person could be thinking of it that way. But if you think about it in knowing your resume in that lane, so that every question, so every date you have, every reason you left, everything you learned, every story that you can pull from that, right, to help you prove that, right? Another lane is, what's my motivation? So I visualize that. Is that a question about my motivation? Well, what gets me out of bed in the morning? Oh, well, tell me about, that job and why you took that. Well, it was a really interesting opportunity for me. It was a bit of a risk, but, my kids were going through college at that time. And I felt like it was a really calculated risk to help us get to the next level to pay for college, right? So I've got all these stories sort of lined up in my brain to handle those questions. And then the last channel or last lane is, why should they hire me? Which is across all of the lanes with really good stories about how you persevered, how you overcame challenges, the kind of person you are, that kind of thing. Because a lot of times in interviews, people don't really look to make that connection that way. They feel like it's question asked, question answered, question asked, question answered, where it's really more about looking at the person as a whole and seeing and envisioning that person in the job. So when you said channels, Chris, I'm like, oh my goodness, like that's exactly how I approach one of the ways I prepare my people for interviews. So
Wow,
cool.
That's incredible. It's incredible how, things come together on a show. Welcome, Ralph. I'm so sorry for waking you up so early in the morning.
Oh no, it was a phone call that woke me up. With the radio being all over the world, I get phone calls all the time. So I got a little tied up with a phone call from somebody in Great Britain.
Okay.
About another interview.
So I know you wanted to chime in about the conversation, and
especially with the lanes thing. I'm being all about stroke. That I can see how that can be. How would you transform that idea of the lanes into recovery? I mean, there's physical, emotional, mental. There's all of those different things create the challenges. As a coach, how would you get somebody to look at it that way for stroke recovery in particular?
Jimmy, you can answer first, then Chris.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I don't. prescribed to know about stroke recovery, so I wouldn't, know that in that vein.
But I will tell you that, we've spoken about it, Jimmy, and this is
Yeah.
what helped me to successfully
Yeah.
navigate my recovery was sports. Was like just I was focused. I was focused. Like
Well,
I just wanted to recover.
Well,
Like,
yeah, and I think, having a coach in that can help people see, sometimes it's interesting too. And I say this to my folks all the time. Some of the things that come to you naturally or easily, we take for granted, right? You say that, yeah, I'm focused, right? And I'm going to make this happen. But a
yeah,
lot of people don't necessarily feel that way. So
I know.
right. So again, and it's funny, I say it to kids all the time, like, well, you really carry yourself really well in an interview. When you're talking to me, you seem very comfortable. I'm like, yeah, of course I am. They're like, no, no, no. That's incredibly
Yes.
valuable.
Yes.
Just because it's easy for you doesn't mean it's not incredibly valuable to a hiring manager, especially, right? Because a lot of senior people can't stand up in front of a room and talk. So
Right.
that's something to talk about. That's a strength for you, right? So
Right.
sometimes the best thing about using a coach is helping them see what they don't really even know and see. So I
Right.
would imagine in that world of the stroke recovery, setting up timelines, setting up goals, setting up sort of short-term goals of where people can reach certain things that are going to help them feel like they've accomplished something. I would imagine that would be a great way to do it. Breaking it down into, first off, having a plan, right? I would imagine like that's got to be one of the means where what's your goal, and then kind of work it backwards from a plan that way.
Yeah. And I think, and Ralph and everybody will agree with this, that like someone going for a job needs a coach, and someone
Yes.
that, needs to other aspects of their life needs Chris in their lives, a stroke survivor needs to be connected to someone or something like us who have been through it, that who can help them navigate that, because the truth is that Chris and Jimmy don't understand what it feels like to have a stroke. Like we get it. We get it. And I was telling Jimmy or Chris or whatever before that someone had said on my show one time, Ralph, about urgency. That's the word that explains me. Urgency.
Remember that conversation.
Right,
Yes.
right. That conversation, because no, we're not playing games. We have stroke. Like our lives changed. And the truth is that I think that when something drastic happens to you, you really need to stop and think back and be sure that you're doing what you want in your life and you're handling what you need in your life. You know what I'm saying? That's my personal opinion. Although, like Chris and I were talking about before, that yes, I would rather be doing my foundation work. I would rather be singing. I would rather be, full time, but I can't. I have to keep another job.
Yeah.
So I have to balance both of them to be able to navigate through life.
Yeah.
Life is not easy, as we said initially in the beginning. I think it was you, Ralph, that brought that urgency word to me.
Yeah, we started it with fear, and then we described it as urgency instead. After you've had a life-changing event or a near-death experience, you get a fear and an urgency in your head. What excites me about co-hosting today with you guys is that what I went through was, first of all, I had to recognize the small victories every day, that became bigger ones by doing. One of my lanes was doing stuff that I did before that I couldn't. And it may have looked really ugly, but all of a sudden, each of those steps became better.
Yeah.
And now I can actually ride a bike again. I just tried that within the last month.
God bless you.
I never thought I'd run again, much less ride a bike.
That's exciting.
Awesome.
That's exciting.
It's getting motivation for yourself, and coaching is. I advocate for some kind of coaching always. Because
Can I just circle back with Chris? I'd like to hear. I know I answered that question about the lanes and stuff for whatever. I'm really intrigued how you break things out.
Yeah, sure. And one of the things that and this is a kinesthetic term, but hit me because I'm primarily kinesthetic and I'm just barely getting out of kindergarten on learning how to be visual myself. But what hit me about what you said was these lanes that is preparing us, and you use the word prepare,
Yep.
to have the conversation. So you're preparing the person to have the conversation. We kind of I, like you, probably, I'm guessing, like to be deliberate and prepared.
What's explain deliberate? What's the terminology? What does deliberate mean?
Yeah. As opposed to being spontaneous and coming up with things off the top of one's head.
Okay.
I like to be prepared. I have in front of me notes for a class I'm teaching on Thursday about visual, just to help the conversation.
Right.
Because I like to be prepared, and it's a little bit of it's just the way that I do it, but I'm stretching to be more unprepared and just kind of go wing it.
We always say wing it is recommended and approved on this show.
100%.
That's our motto.
Yeah.
Well, it's so funny, Renee. You say that. My family's asking me, well, "What are you going to be talking about?" I'm like, "I'm not really sure."
Yeah, right.
But I know Renee and I are going to make it work.
Yeah. Well, this is Chris's first time on the show, and and anybody that's new to our world is like, oh, do you want me to say this? Do you want me to do that? What do you want me to prepare? And honestly, I like to take it where it's going to go. But that doesn't mean
There isn't a plan.
I will share with like, this is something that Jimmy will say, and Ralph and Chris doesn't mean you go without preparing.
No.
It does not mean you go without preparing. I have notes, a ton of notes. Like, if I need to navigate us talking about something, I'm certainly going to be able to do that. But I'd rather what are we talking about? Like, what are we navigating? We're navigating towards, the lanes, and we're navigating towards recovery, and we're navigating towards burning. And the truth is that I think that it really doesn't, I shouldn't say it in this fashion, pardon me, but it really doesn't matter what it is that has gotten you to this point. All that you have to do is you have to grab what you can from whatever's being taught to you, and whatever you can use to better your life, because we all have different lives. We're all different people. We're all different makeups. And sometimes, what Jimmy, what you said and what Chris said, like, that may be important to me. Wow, that works for me. And maybe a stroke survivor is like, wow, I should get a coach. You know what I'm saying? I should get someone to help me. You know what I'm saying?
Organize their stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, it's so important to bring different aspects onto it. Like on my one of my shows, someone said, well, why are you having them on your show that's about strokes? And I'm like, because it's important. Because we suffered a stroke does not mean that we're left, does not mean we don't have a life. We need to be brought in, and we need to be brought into the conversation about different things. Okay. So, Chris, I'm going to let you finish talking, and then you could just answer Ralph's question as well.
Yeah. And if I can regain my train of thought.
I know. Sorry, I talk too much.
No. There's so much. The reality is, Renee, that there's so much to this conversation that there are multiple trains of thoughts that are going on at once. So I think what you were saying about, we're talking about preparedness versus chaos or winging it. What if we could dovetail the two? What if we, God has a plan for our life. We don't know all of the details of that plan. He has that plan. We do our best to kind of be open to it, but that's a challenge for anybody. So we're faced with that chaos, but we like to be a little bit prepared. What if we could dovetail the two? So I would propose that. And
Chris, no, I love that you just said that, because that's something I'm still working on, candidly, right? As a 61-year-old man, I'm like, I'm good. I can't even say pretty good. I'm really good off of the cuff. Like that's a strength of mine. But I think I could be better if I was more planned and more organized. You know what I mean? So kind of merging those. So I think that comes down to self-awareness, right? And that's another thing I always make sure to try and make sure with my clients to say, okay, so you need to know what your strengths and weaknesses are, right? So if you're going into this interview and you're a shy person, you're not going to be a shy person today, right? You have to push through that. You have to kind of go into character of the situation that you're in. And I say this all the time, and you may not agree, but I'm really kind of an introvert in who I am. I say it all the time, I'm still like a shy kid from Hawthorne, right? That's kind of how I'm wired. But
And the
I
truth
push
is,
through.
so am I.
Right, exactly. But what we do is you go into character in certain situations, right? Where you are, well, shoot, I'm interviewing today. I got to take care of my family. I got to get this job. I got to be on the edge of my seat, and I have to put that hat on today to go through it. So one of the things I really think is effective when I work with my clients is, okay, where are you in that? Well, I'm a little shy, Jim. Okay, all right, that's fine. That's cool. So am I. How are we going to pull that out of you to make it comfortable for you? So when those questions come, you're ready, right? Or the initial meeting, when you first meet somebody, that first 5-10 seconds is literally the most important part of the interview.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're a shy person, you cannot be today. You have to have a warm, firm handshake, warm greeting, a gracious, grateful, thankful introduction. And with them, you have to, how I say it is you have to own that interaction as if people were coming to your home, right? For a party. You're not going to be a lump on a log, right? You're going to welcome them. Oh, can I give you a coat?
Right.
Let me have your coat. Let me put you, right? So I try to help them think of triggers in that way to kind of push them through those initial things. But the most important thing is really discovering where those weaknesses are. And that's what happens in a lot of our meetings. Go ahead, Chris.
Right,
Yes.
Chris, I see you excited.
Yeah, I see the light bulb.
There's one word. There's one word to play on and jazz off of what Jim's saying, and maybe to answer what Ralph's question was too.
Yeah.
Curiosity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Curiosity. If you can get somebody from a position of thinking that they're afraid to do something or afraid of a social situation, and get them curious about the other person, curious about what's on the other side of the fear, curious about what's on the other side of it,
Great word.
then it switches how we think.
And that's exactly why I advocate for coaching and other methods of therapies, because with your cognitive issues after stroke, you may not be aware, but the cognitive issues, you don't always understand what's happening when they're talking to you as a new therapist, new doctor, whatever.
Right.
So you have to plan those things, and you have to write them down. You have to not be introverted, which, believe it or not, with what I do, I am a very introverted person.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not great in crowds, but I do well in crowds.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to learn that. But,
Yep.
there's just those issues that you have to keep in line in order to make your recovery better. Because so many people get the woe is me attitude. So many people will. And one of my favorite sayings in the world, and I've always believed this, especially after stroke, is the only dumb question is the one you don't ask.
Right. Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
you have to be part of the conversation. You have to be the captain of your own team,
Yeah.
if you will.
Yeah.
So, and what you guys are saying is absolutely true.
Go
You
ahead.
gotta have curiosity about the therapy and here's the list of things I gotta ask, no matter how crazy it sounds.
Yeah. I mean, even when I started this journey on the show, like I was never a host. I mean, I went to Madhouse TV in Long Island to talk about doing my telethon. And I was saying this last show, I was over here talking to Tommy or Vicky about doing my telethon, and Bobby Baby Walker sitting over here talking about doing a television show. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So as soon as he booked it, I had to put my co-host, and I had to yes, hi, how you doing? Like, it's so exciting. Like, and the truth is, I I always knew I was a good singer, even though I was nervous when I sang.
Always.
I always knew I could sing, but to talk, like now, you can't keep me quiet. But like, and the truth is, I'm very careful in what I say because words are very, 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 very powerful. Let's
Yep.
touch on that, how powerful words are, because Jimmy, if they go into for looking for a job and they say the wrong thing, even though they should speak from their heart and their souls, they can't just say anything.
Right.
Chris, and then you talk about that, Chris. Bring that, and then Jimmy could talk, and then Ralph. I mean, how important are the words that we say in life?
Go ahead, Chris.
I'm always monitoring what I say.
Yep.
So
Me
I'm
too.
always choosing the use, and I don't want to say right, but the useful words. What's going to be useful to the client? What's going to be useful in the situation? And then again, to use that word dovetail, we're dovetailing what we want with what they need and want. And so the words that we choose, yeah, I agree, they're very important.
Yes, yes, and we're and what I've learned from Dominic Cortese, who everybody knows, I talk about all the time. He has taught me that if you say something that's wrong, what do we do about it? What do we do about it? We just go back and fix it. We
Right.
go back and we call
Right.
them, or we say to the person or to the. I mean, you could even call a job and say, I was wrong in what I said. Like I should have not said that. That wasn't correct. I was, was a little taken back. Or to be honest and open about that and start a conversation, I would find that very appealing for a client, for a hire.
Well, where I think that starts, and what I think we're scratching at a little bit, is having a relationship or building a relationship, right? Because if you have a relationship with someone, right, Chris, you can really fall on the sword more easily, right? Or, oh, I don't know where that came from. I'm really sorry about that, right? And I used to, as a sales manager in my staffing world, I would always our business was all relationship based because what we sold was incredibly intangible. So it was all based on trust and faith and follow up and all of those kind of things, because it's like, well, I'm presenting a person skill set that I've cleared as best as I could, that, if they have a bad day and you want to fire them in 3 days, I got to have a relationship with you that you're going to want to work with me again. Right. So it's not necessarily about me. It's about the relationship that you're trying to garner. So again, in an interview, a lot of that I stress with that first 5 seconds and that making that good personal connection, because if you have that, then what'll happen is, he blew that question, but I really like him.
Yeah.
And it's okay, because no one's necessarily perfect either, right? And then you can also, at the end of the interview, if you have that relationship, you can circle back and say, hey, you know what? You asked me that question earlier about, that job I had. I wanted to revisit that for a second, if that's okay, because I don't feel like I really gave you a full understanding of what I actually went through there. Can we replay that? Right? Because if you have a relationship, you can do that, right? And again, that's something I take for granted a bit, that I'm pretty good at, right? But those are the kind of things that if you work on them and push through some of that discomfort, that won't just help you on an interview. That'll help you in your life across everything that you do, right? Because if you approach every uncomfortable situation where I'm looking to make a relationship here today, I'm not looking to get over on anybody, I just want to be kind and build relationships, good things will come from that. And then your confidence starts to grow and your ability to communicate becomes even better. So
do you
and I can't say with us, and some people with aphasia in particular, which is the inability to speak or long words, that's exactly how your recovery gets better. Once you develop a relationship with that good therapist, that good coach, that good psychologist, that good pharmacist, those kind of things develop, and you start getting your conversations become easier. Your cognitive issues start reducing. So I agree with you totally. It's you know, it's going into it with a relationship I didn't discover for a while. I was a captain of my own team. I could fire my therapist if I didn't
Right.
have a relationship. You know, you go out and interview the physical therapy facility to
Yes.
see if it's right for you and the person you're going to be working with. You don't have to take a recommendation that just doctor says go to this guy. You don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
And we do need to have a team around us because as a
Yes.
stroke survivor, and that's important, and we don't need to talk about it in this show because we've spoken about it on other shows, but
Yeah.
that's something you need to do prior to suffering anything. You need to set your team up around you so that when something happens and you can't talk, you can't be aware of what you're doing, you have that team set in place to take care of you, and they know your visions, and they know what you desire, and they know you enough to be your advocate, I think that's really important because, you know, Ralph, you're talking about being the coach on your team, but you were in the right frame of mind to be able to be on the team. Me, I was a floater. Everything was good, everybody was nice, I just wanted to live life, but like I said before, Dominic Cordelesa kind of brought me down and said, you can float, but you got to come down and talk to people, because otherwise you're not going to make a difference in the world, and I'm like, okay. So I had to navigate through learning that. Now I could float when I want and, be on the ground when I want.
But it's so interesting because it is kind of a learned skill. And what I'm seeing a lot now with, the kids that are graduating today, or the Gen X, or whatever, the Gen Y and Gen Z, I'm reading a lot where a lot of these folks are getting let go pretty easily in their first couple of months or first 6 months on the job because they don't know how to communicate.
Oh.
Yes.
It's really interesting, where, and again, I don't want to sound like an old guy here, but like everybody, the guy, I know I am. Thanks, Renee, jerk.
No, we are. I'm the same age as you. I went to school.
We're the same age, girlfriend.
I'm older than you. My birthday's in January.
All right. So the this generation of being on their phones and stuff is really hard. Like we didn't have that growing up, right? So we had to communicate, and it's really interesting that the work ethic and all the things that you hear, these terrible things about this next generation, it's kind of coming to fruition. But it's interesting because I do a lot of stuff at the college level. I do group presentations at Rutgers and Ramapo and some of these other places, and a lot of the kids I'm dealing with. And it's interesting, kind of a little bit what you were saying before too, Chris, where it's like giving them the tools or hearing it differently from someone else. Their parents might be saying something similar, but me coming in with no agenda other than trying to help them, they hear it a little bit differently. Where I'm like, no, dude, you got to pick that up, man.
Yeah.
This is not going to work. I had one kid I was working with, right? I made a connection with him with people in my network, right? Because he was looking for a job. I didn't charge him anything, and that's not the reason. I just wanted to help the kid. So I follow up with him like 2 or 3 months later. Just, hey man, just thinking about you. How are things going? Oh, Jim, I landed a job at the person you told me that you connected me with. I'm like, wow. And you didn't let me know?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
No, and I kind of lovingly clipped him on it. I said his name was Josh. I'm like, Josh, it's okay that you didn't call me, dude, but you cannot do this.
Yeah. In life, you can't do it. In life.
Somebody helped you. You need to thank them. Oh, I'm just not comfortable with that. Like, well, you have to get comfortable with it and you have to push through it. So these life skills kind of things is a whole nother area that I'm helping a lot of these young kids with. But it's what's cool about it though, which it really excites me, is once you scratch at it a little bit and love them a little bit, they see it and then they want to implement it. Yeah. And then I get the call back. Thanks, Coach O. I got the job. I couldn't have done it without you. Yeah. Like that just makes you feel, because we know at our age what it's going to take, right? Because I say to them, anybody in a hiring position has probably been through some stuff, right? Yeah. So you need to be able to bring that kind of mindset to the table that you're the solution for them, right? Yeah. So that starts to turn their brain a little bit around. And then I challenge them to say, hey, it's funny, I say it at the end of all group presentations. I'm like, hey, the world out there thinks you guys are like this and are not going to be able to bring it. So you need to work on that. And they, you feel the challenge in it. And I love seeing the kids push up and rise through it.
That's so exciting. Chris, I mean, Jimmy's talking about coaching, right? And we were talking about in the Zoom green room about your changing your, not what you're presenting, but your title for presenting. So, and this is a little bit, but this goes back to what I was sharing initially, that to me, in my world, if you're not into acupuncture, hypnotist, Reiki, all that holistic world, then when you hear hypnotist, you're like, oh my God, what is that? I want you to really describe to people what hypnotist is. Because like I said, and I shared with everybody, my father, when I was in this house where I am, my father used to hypnotize people with a coin. And I don't know what they did because he didn't let me, I was young. I really didn't follow. But what is hypnotism? What does it do? And I will share another thing that I was hypnotized by someone one time, and they did it completely different. I sat in the chair and they talked me into hypnosis. So I really want you to focus on your form of hypnotism and what you do with it in the world.
Okay.
Big
So,
question, right?
yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but I'm going to try to make it short and sweet. So all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. And everybody believes in hypnosis, really. Actually, everybody believes in hypnosis, but a lot of people don't think they can be hypnotized. But here's a good metaphor. Have you ever been driving your car and maybe miss a turn? It happens to everybody. Miss a turn, be daydreaming a little bit, miss a turn, or get where you're going and go, how did I get here?
Right.
Yeah. That's a great metaphor for hypnosis. So really, we're teaching a lot of people, just to kind of dovetail back to what Jim and Ralph are talking about as well, is we're helping folks to be graceful with themselves, because that's what hypnosis really is that state of grace where we're able to be open to a new idea, open to a new suggestion. We relax our autonomic nervous system down enough so that we can be open and receptive to a new idea. That
is such an important, like Oprah used to say, that's a moment. Like hypnosis is being graceful to yourself. To be great, like that's something, because we all should have grace to ourselves. I mean, I'm harder on myself than anybody will ever be. So
and there's times to be hard on and put pressure on, but there's also times to be nice to ourselves in our own head.
Right. Because that allows, and what was I listening to? I'm actually listening to Mel Robbins, her new book, Let Them. And she actually does, talks about the same thing in a different format, to really not worry about it so much, to really back out and give yourself the grace to say, okay, let them. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I just think it's a great tool. But then, of course, like we all talked about before with the shovel, let them, but then you have to let me. You have to do it. You have to do it yourself. The snow is not, the hole is not getting dug without them doing it. Jimmy, they're not getting the job without doing the work and going in. Ralph, you're not you're not recovering any. When I was an ambassador for strokes, I was in the city. I Sing for Hope. I was a part of Sing for Hope for a while, and we'd go into the room and we'd sing to those that suffered. And when someone had a stroke, I asked permission to be able to share my story with them when everybody left. And they graced me with that. And I said to everybody, I said, look at me, I'm singing for you. You'll be, you got it. But the truth is that you have to want to do it. You're the one that has to want to recover. You're the one that has to, I know it's hard, you know, I know it's hard. It's almost like Jimmy, you know, when you're going in front of those kids and you're saying to them, no, that's not good. You got to do this. Like that was what they wanted me to, not them, but when I became an ambassador for another hospital, that's what they wanted me to share with them, because as professionals in a hospital, they couldn't say that to them. They couldn't be the ones to say, hey, you're the one that's gotta want to, the urge to get better, you know? So it's a tough line.
Can I ask Chris a question?
Yeah.
What can you give me an idea of like what your who your clients are? Like, is it are they professionals? Are they? I'm very curious to what your clients are like.
Yeah. Used to be in the old days when I was running big clinics with 80 people a week.
Wow.
Really, those folks were just, I want to say, everyday folks, working folks, many faith-based. And now I'm very interested in working with folks who are, I love working with those folks and executives, because executives tend to finish assignments.
Right.
So I'm very interested in that at this moment. So yeah, does that kind of answer?
Yeah, sure. That's great. Yep.
And executives have to be an example for their team below them.
Leadership
Because
stuff. Yeah.
if you're not going to do it, then how do you expect us to do it? You know?
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking back too, and I think some of the things that I do for like getting to sleep at night or getting through pain, or it sounds like self-hypnosis to me. I mean, is it breathing? Is it thought processes? How do you do the self-hypnosis? For example, at night I breathe in between breaths. I say it's a long sentence, but I will wake up at 5 a.m.
Right.
You know, in between the deep breaths. Is that what we're talking about? Is that as simple as it can get?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you notice, Ralph, that when you're doing that, you're giving yourself a suggestion,
Yes.
giving yourself, and it's known as autogenetic, auto suggestion. So you're actually accepting that suggestion, and you're self-guiding that process. So yeah.
And when people are looking for someone in the hypnosis field, what do they have to be careful of? Because, and I'm sorry to say this, but I've gone through therapists like I've gone through socks. You know, some of them just don't know about stroke. Therapies started for orthopedic. Now they're evolved into strokes. So there's a physiotherapist and a physical therapist. So, I mean, it's just different. Is there special qualifications we should be looking for in a hypnosis, or a flat red flags when we're talking to a hypnosis person?
We would say that intention is everything.
Okay.
Intention is important. And but even with the person with questionable intentions, a student can still learn. But if the hypnotist has good, like Miyagi and like Karate Kid, you know,
Yeah.
he just
Paint
asks you to
on,
do this.
paint on.
That's right.
Chris, I gotta tell you though, I clicked with you when you came to Radburn, because to me, in my world, and this is only my personal feeling, is I prefer when somebody is very easygoing and describes things in a more calm manner, because really the way that you're speaking to us is the way we should all be, in that tranquil, graceful space for us. So you're setting the example to us of how we should live. Now that doesn't mean you can't get excited, you know, like Jimmy, when you're in front of people, you know, like, I'm so excited, you know, like when I sing, I should be excited. When Ralph talks about his Stroke Warrior Radio, he should be excited. But to give ourselves the grace, I really admire you so much with that.
It's a practice, and I am just getting out of kindergarten on it. Really, because I was real hard on myself in the past.
Yeah.
But
You probably had to go through that to be able to sit here and tell us, you know, like, this is the truth. You know, this is my truth. This works for us, me.
Yeah, and you can trust it. You can trust grace. You can trust, and bring it back to God if I can.
Yes.
God has a plan, and I couldn't do what I'm doing without him.
Yeah.
There's not a chance. And Jim, I see him shaking his head, like, you know, you all know this.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sure.
But sometimes it's still hard to trust in it. That's something I struggle with, that I'm a work in progress big time on all of it, you know, where it's like, trying to give it up. And my sister says it all the time. She goes, let go, let God, you know, and it's really, really good advice. Sometimes it's hard to lean into, but that needs to be our default as opposed to secondary or, tertiary.
It's a lifelong practice, like, for everybody.
Yeah.
Human nature.
Yep.
Yeah.
So let's circle back to the transformation, because we only have 3 more minutes. Believe it or not, didn't it go fast?
Beautiful.
I mean,
well, you talked a lot, that's for sure.
I know I talk too much.
See, I can say that I know her since first grade, so it's okay.
So yeah, but I got a lot to say, and I hope
Amazing.
Listen, we've all talked about, like, we've had to go through things. So, and like Jimmy really, sets in his teachings is, got to tell your story, right? You got to have a story, and that story will help somebody or help you to get the job that you want.
100%.
You'll connect with that person. So,
The worst thing you could do is in an interview is have one word answers, right? So you have to really be able to, and to what you said before, Chris, intention. I love that word, and being intentional about everything we do and being prepared, right? It's so important. It's hard to get an interview these days. So when you get in there, man, you got to take that opportunity really seriously and be prepared, because I almost have the mindset, think that there's 10 or 20 other people out in the lobby waiting to knock you out of that spot. So if you go in there without the right mindset and the right preparedness, it's not going to happen. You went through college, you went through all this hard work. Now it's time to get to work. You got to switch that part of your brain on and be really ready to go with it. And story form is 100% the best way to do it. So, and I love teaching the kids. I love helping them find their story, because a lot of kids think, well, I don't have anything to say. I'm just a kid out of college. I'm like,
right.
But so.
Not true.
Right, right. I'm going to give you an opportunity to close, and the what is the title today? Transformation. So the title is Unleash Your Vision, but transformation I use in the verbiage, in the write-up. I want you to, share a little bit, about your closing on that, and give where they can reach you, and title to your business, and really, because, and I hope that you'll both come back, because we do have so much more to talk about in the future. So Chris, I'm gonna let you go first.
Sure. Well, the easy way to reach me is freehypnoticscreening.com, and there's a free download on there. Did that answer the question?
Yeah. And what do you, and what if you had like a 30-second or elevator speech to give to somebody about your vision for 2025, what would that be?
Be nice to yourself. Have goals. Have like Ralph is talking about, giving suggestion to himself for waking up at a specific time. Have goals. give, whether they're small or big, but be nice to yourself, do it, be flexible about multiple ways to get those goals.
That's very good. Very good.
Awesome.
Chris, I hope you'll come back with us in a few months to pick up the conversation, because the work you're doing is really, really important and really valuable to life, especially nowadays when things are a little chaotic in the world, I think.
Very enjoyable to be here with you.
Awesome.
Gimme, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It was so nice to meet you, Chris and Ralph. I really feel flattered to be part of this and grateful for you, Renee. I love you, and I'm so grateful for all you do. Renee does so much for me. Just, I'm terrible at PowerPoint, so I send her stuff in the middle of the night, and she'll have it back to me by 9 o'clock the next morning with it looking like so professional. So
that's
so
like
grateful.
that's a play thing for me.
I know, I love it because
get to play and
it
create.
stresses the heck out of me. So having you as my partner with that is such a blessing. So, no, man, I guess my vision for 2025 is I want to help as many people as I can. It's, it's funny, like having a specialty or kind of like being an expert in something feels good to be able to help these kids, because I've seen a lot in my life of what it takes to be successful on an interview or in a career piece. So, and I've also been a coach for my whole life too, my whole adult life. So it's kind of my wiring. It's my family's wiring. It's came from my dad and my sisters and brothers and everybody. So it's
And don't forget to mention your mom.
my mom.
My dad.
She wasn't much of a coach. She was more of a disciplinarian, but she was great too. She kept us in line, that's for sure.
Yes,
But
your mom.
yeah, so you can reach out to me at OhaganCareerCoaching.com, and I have so many flexible plans to be able to help you with whatever you need. And the cool thing, it's my business, so I can work with you on the pricing if it need be. It's not about that right now. It's really about helping out. So I'm grateful for all that.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. Thank you so much, Chris. I can't wait to talk to you guys offline. Ralph, we're gonna talk about Stroke Warrior Radio in the next show, but give them how many countries we're in right now. And we're so honored to be a part of that streaming. This show is going worldwide.
Come on.
Every day,
every
weekday, 3 a.m., 3 p.m., all around the world, 3 a.m. for our international listeners from 43 different countries now. We're getting thousands of followers on all the socials and everything. So it's growing for a guy that knew nothing about radio.
That's awesome.
Lost all his computer skills from a stroke and had to relearn everything after my stroke. But I have relearned a lot of it, so the brain can heal itself. So, and that's what we're hoping to do in 2025 is help more people heal their brains.
So you guys can say you're international now. Well, Chris, you've already been, but Jimmy, you're going.
I'm gonna have to put that on my website now.
Yeah,
StrokeWarriorRadio.com.
When I send it to Ralph and he's streaming it, we'll send you, because he makes an actual flyer with the title of the show on it, and we'll send it out.
We post the daily schedule every day with banners.
So the next set of shows that I send to Ralph, this will be included. It's very exciting.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Okay, we have to go because we have another show after this. But thank you so much for joining us today. We're
nice
so
to meet
happy.
you, Chris.
Don't
pleasure, guys.
Don't click off yet. Don't click off yet. Just let me close out and let me get off of Facebook. Thank you so much for joining us. We got a wonderful next show. It's called Pathways to Transformations. That's the next show. So thank you so much for joining us. This was an extraordinary, it was extraordinary.
Yes, it was.
Nobody, we all kept up the level. And thank you so much for joining us. We're going to click out, have a stroke of luck in your life. We all have a wonderful 2025. It's going to be one that we're going to mark the books. Thank you so much. See you soon.
Take care.
Bye now.
Bye.
You guys.